Hey guys, welcome at Disrupt 2020 and thank you for joining this session on Nerdio Manager for WVD and the Windows Virtual Desktop opportunity in the enterprise. So throughout the next 20 or 25 minutes or so, I will be talking about Nerdio Manager for WVD, of course, though I'd like to spend most of my time showing you a thing or two as well. So demos, it is. I'll start with a brief introduction about Nerdio on the company itself, some notes from the field that I've picked up throughout the last year and a half with regards to getting started with WVD and Azure usage in general. Then some theory around Nerdio Manager for WVD as well, and then onto the good stuff, the demos. So Nerdio as a company was founded back in 2016, although the company behind Nerdio back then was already in business for over 10 years, including the people involved as well. So a ton of experience was already there, you could say. Now, back in 2017, Nerdio launched Nerdio Private Cloud, and at the same time, Microsoft announced RDMI in private preview. Sort of the same thing happened back in 2018 as well. Nerdio for Azure was launched, and at the same time, WVD was announced in private preview. Which brings us to 2019, the year that WVD went GA. I think we can all remember that. But also the year that WVD management capabilities were built into Nerdio for Azure. Fast forward to 2020, a couple of months ago, we released and announced Nerdio Manager for WVD, which we like to refer to as the ultimate WVD deployment, management, and auto-scaling tools for IT pros. So, some notes from the field before we get into Nerdio Manager for WVD. Now, this is something that companies have to deal with, basically, and some of the feedback that I've gotten throughout the last year and a half from companies looking into WVD. Which starts with a lack of Azure knowledge in general. This is something that all companies have to deal with, because I think you sort of need to have a base understanding of how Azure works to be able to understand how WVD works as well. And it can be quite a steep learning curve with regards to WVD if we talk about things like ARM templates, JSON language, PowerShell, and so on and so forth. And of course, they've made it a little easier today with the spring release, but there's still a few gaps to be filled. Now, knowledge that leaves the company, which is also a concern of most companies, because I've met multiple companies where one or two guys or girls had everything running smoothly. They were deep into it, WVD, everything worked fine, but then something broke. One or two have left the company or were sick or were unavailable for other reasons. And then what do? You basically have to start all over with regards to getting that knowledge over to someone else, or perhaps you would look outside to buy in knowledge, so to speak. Those guys or girls won't know your company that well, so that's a challenge as well. How to save on costs, optimize WVD usage, because the cloud can be expensive, and I think most of you will agree. At least if you don't know how to optimize your Azure resources, that is. And that's something we can help with as well. And of course, there will always be a feature gap, features and functionality missing, not only today, but going forward as well, where companies say, well, we need at least this or that before WVD can be taken into production. And basically, Nerdio can help you with all of these bullets because it's pretty easy, or we make it pretty easy. We hide the complexity and we make it so that basically every technician within your company can work with WVD, can implement WVD, but can also manage WVD. That's basically what we do. So with regards to the deployment architecture, it is a standalone Azure application. It's not multi-tenant, which is important to understand because it has multiple advantages. It's deployed within your own subscription, or within your own tenant, or within your customer's tenant. So that means that you will have full control with regards to a security perspective as well. It's not an Azure managed application, so Nerdio or any other company for that matter has no access, which means it is not a control plane somewhere in Europe, the UK, the US, or whatever. Nobody has access except you, the customer, or the company managing it for the customer. And it is deployed and built through the Azure Marketplace, which makes that process pretty easy as well. And of course, it is available. Nerdio Manager for WVD is available in all regions worldwide. So enough with all the talk and all the theory. Let's have a look and do some demos. Okay, so here we go. Once you log into Nerdio Manager for WVD, this is the screen you'll start out with. Of course, it will be empty because you won't have anything configured, but that's what we'll have a look at during this demo. Now, I'm purposely not going to show you the setup process because you basically search for Nerdio Manager for WVD within the Azure Marketplace, click install, and that's basically it. You'll follow a 4-step process. You'll fill in some credentials, you'll pick a resource group and things like that, and within, let's say, 15 to 20 minutes, you'll be up and running. You will end up with a URL, which will get you into Nerdio Manager for WVD. Now, you'll probably want to start out with adding in a workspace or adding in a tenant, depending on which version of WVD you are using. Which brings me to the first point. Here you see workspaces and tenants within the same graphical user interface. Let's have a look at the settings for that. So one thing we've added is the hybrid model, which means that you can have both workspaces and tenants managed from the same graphical user interface from Nerdio Manager for WVD. However, if you would like to use the fall release only or the spring release only, that's possible as well. Just click one or the other, wait a couple of minutes, and you'll be good to go. I'll use the workspaces for the purposes of this demo, and let's add in a workspace and show you how easy it is to get started. Here you would need to give it a name. I'll just use some random numbers, a friendly name as well, and this is what your users will be able to see. You can fill in the description if you like, choose a resource group to deploy the workspace into, and the same applies to the region within Azure, which you can choose as well. Click OK, and just within a couple of seconds the workspace will be created, as you can see here. So one of the next things you will probably like to do is you would like to add in a host pool. Now with a host pool we have a couple of options, as you can see here as well. We have a dynamic host pool and a static host pool, and the difference between the two is actually quite simple. Now if you would start with a static host pool, that would mean that if you would like to add in hosts or remove hosts from the host pool, that would be a manual process. And with manual, I don't mean using PowerShell or anything like that. No, I mean using this graphical user interface. And I'll show you how that's done in just a couple of minutes. With a dynamic host pool, we can use auto-scaling to take care of that. And that's what I'd like to show you right now. So let's add in a dynamic host pool. Again, we would need to give it a name, a description if you like, and of course you can choose the desktop experience to go with it. So a hosted shared environment if you like, published applications, or a personal desktop. And I guess you guys pretty much know what this all means, right? So, and if not, please do ask and I'll be glad to explain it to you, of course. A name prefix, this is used for the machines that will automatically be added to this host pool by the means of auto-scaling. Of course, you would need to select a network for the machines to connect to. You would select a desktop image for the machines to be used with regards to auto-scaling, a VM size to go with it, and these are basically all of the VMs that are available on the Azure platform as well, and the same applies to all of the OS disks available in Azure that go with the various VMs. Now here you can choose to assign a user or a group of users as well, but it's something we can do at a later time as well, which I'm going to choose at this time. So let's click OK, and now it will provision in the background the dynamic host pool. And one of the first screens we will see in just a few seconds is the configuration page of the auto-scaling setup. Yes, here we go. I didn't pause or anything, so you can see how quickly this went by. So here, auto-scaling is turned off by default. With a flip of a switch, we can turn it on. And let's have a look at what we can configure. Now, first of all, this is the information we just configured, right? So this is used for the machines that will be added automatically by the means of auto-scaling. Here we have the estimated monthly costs with regards to all of your Azure resources consumed by this host pool. So anything you'll change here, you will see change here as well, which is pretty cool. Now with regards to host pool sizing, let's have a look at the defaults, and of course you can change this to any number you like. But the base host pool capacity means that there will be, in this case, 5 hosts within the pool at all times. And these hosts can be turned off, they can be turned on, that doesn't really matter, because here you can say the minimum active host capacity is set to 1. And this means that at least one of these 5 hosts will need to be active will need to be started so your users will be able to connect to it. Now, with regards to auto scaling, you will be adding in hosts automatically. You will also be removing hosts automatically. And here it says that the base host pool capacity of 5 can be extended basically with a maximum of 2, which brings me to the scaling logic. Now, as you can see here, CPU usage is selected by default, but you can also work with average active sessions, available sessions, and later on memory will be added as well, which is something we are currently working on. So here it states, excuse me, that 1 host will be added, will be scaled out if the CPU utilization across all hosts will exceed 65% for at least 5 minutes. And the same thing will happen with regards to scaling in, so removing a host, if the CPU utilization across all hosts drops below 40 or less for at least 15 minutes. So that's basically how the scaling logic works. Pretty easy to configure, right? Now here you can say that scaling in, so removing hosts, can happen at any time, or you can choose, for example, to let's say only allow removing hosts, so scaling in hosts at 5 or 6 p.m. in the afternoon, so you know that basically most of your workers have left for home already. Now scale in aggressiveness, which is something we are currently working on. This is not available in the current project just yet. But I'll tell you this, that scaling in, so removing hosts, works as follows. High level, of course. So first, the empty hosts will be removed. Secondly, it will look at which host has the least sessions. Then those will be removed or scaled in. And then from then on, all of the other hosts will follow after that, depending on how many you have, of course, in your host pool. Now, one of the other things we can do, we can pre-stage hosts, which means we can go by a time schedule. Let's say Monday to Friday makes sense. And here you can say which number of hosts will need to be booted to be able for your users to log on to by a certain time. So this says at 8 a.m. in the morning from Monday till Friday, at least 1 host will need to be active for my users to be able to log on to, depending on your time zone, of course. Always keep an eye on this one. Now, with scaling in, it means that hosts will be removed. You might have users still be active on that. So here you can send a message to your users informing them that something is about to happen so that they need to log off, save their work, and so on and so forth. Now, if I click save here, this will take effect immediately. And since we are setting up a host pool, this will also mean that the auto scaling mechanism will start to provision 5 hosts for the base host pool capacity to take effect, which is not something I'm going to do now. I'm going to cancel out of this and I'm going to proceed with the rest of this presentation or with the rest of this demo. Now, one of the other things I also wanted to show you before we head over to desktop images, because I just showed you how to select the desktop image when provisioning a dynamic host pool, but you also need to know how to get the images imported within Nerdio Manager for WVD, of course, and then also how to update them, and then also how to update your host pools, which we'll get to in just a minute. Now, I also mentioned that hosts can be added manually, not using PowerShell, but using this graphical user interface. And by the way, everything that I explained today with regards to Workspaces works exactly in the same way for tenants as well, just so you know. So here, the host pool we just created, if we do manage hosts, this is how we would add in a session host manually. Fill in the fields, click OK, and it will be added to the host pool right away. So that's basically how that works. Pretty easy, right? So let's hop over to desktop images. Now here you have the option to add in an VM from Azure. For example, to be used as a template, to be used as a base image for other VMs to be based on, basically. You can give it a name, or you need to give it a name. A description, you will need to fill in the SaaS URL pointing to the VM, and if you don't know what that is or how that works, click on the icon and it will tell you what to do and how to do it. And that goes for all of the other fields within Nerdio Manager for WVD, of course, as well, not just within this page, but on all pages, tabs, and so on and so forth. So select the network to connect to, select the image you would like to use as part of the VM size, OS disk, and you have a couple of other options to think about to tingle with as well. Click OK, and then the Azure VM will be imported within 50 to 20 minutes or so. The same applies to adding stuff from the Azure library. And here we would work with Azure Marketplace images. Again, give it a name, description, network to connect to, select the Marketplace image you would like to import, the VM size to go with it, the OS disk, and again, some of the same options to think about, perhaps configure, click OK, and then the image will be imported from the Azure Gallery within 15 to, let's say, 20 minutes. Okay, so one of the other things you can do after that, you can power the machine on. You can then use the IP address to RDP into it. You can make any change you like. So for example, install software, update software, patch anything you like, security updates, you name it. You can then power it down and set it as an image again to be used to update your hosts within your host pool. And I'm going to show you how that works in just a second. Just so you know, if you have made changes by RDPing into one of your images, once you power it down, all of the sysprep stuff and all of the other things needed to get it to an image to be used for updating your hosts within your host pool will be taken care of automatically. So you won't have to worry about that at all. Okay, so let's hop over back to the workspaces into an existing host pool. Let's select on random one, click on the drop down menu and select resize reimage. This is where it gets interesting again. So here we can select the desktop image we've just updated. Along with it, you can choose to change the VM size or the OS disk if that's something you would like to do here and now as well. You can decide how many hosts as part of your host pool will be updated at the same time, so one or multiple at the same time. But you can also say how many things basically can go wrong before this whole process will come to an end. Not unimportant to think about as well. And we can also, and this is pretty handy, schedule this whole process. So here it says between 12 at midnight and 7 a.m. in the morning, depending on your time zone, of course, always keep an eye on that. Your hosts within your host pool will be updated. No sooner, no later. And again, because your machines will be, well, basically built like new, they will be destroyed. So potentially any users that might still be working on it might lose work. So again, you can send them a message telling them to log off to, so that they won't get into any trouble, basically. Okay, another thing which is good to know is that once these machines are re-imaged, you won't have to worry about DNS, IP addresses, Active Directory objects, and you name it, machine names. These will all stay the same because the virtual network card of the VMs won't be deleted, which is good to know and a very handy way of going about this. So I'll cancel out of this for now and continue with the rest of the demo. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the other options we have with regards to the drop-down menu. I won't go over all of them, but at least a few. So manage assignments. How to assign users to your host pools. Pretty easy. You search for a user or a group of users, select them, and then click assign or unassign, which is an option as well, of course. And that's basically all you have to do. And that's why I said earlier, you can do this now, or you can do it later. And I chose later because I think this is just easier to do, basically. Okay, let's have another look. Let's have a look at the custom RDP settings, because I think these will look familiar to most of you. And it's basically a checkbox which you check or uncheck, click OK, and you'll be good to go. If you know how the WVD load balancing mechanisms work, then that's something you could configure as part of the properties as well. And you've probably noticed Evas Logics in here, which I'd like to highlight as well. But first, I would like to have a look at the settings page for that. So here you can see the Evas Logics profile storage for the profile containers, the location we have configured. So this is basically a UNC path, of course, which points to a file server within Azure. And of course, all of the other configuration options available. This can be changed. Click OK, and you'll be good to go again. Now, one of the other options that we are working on is Azure Files, which basically means you would click Azure Files, you would walk through a short wizard, and then all of the configuration steps needed to set up Azure Files will be taken care of automatically as well. Then we have the same thing already today for Azure NetApp Files, so this is available already. You would have to go over a couple of things, not much. Just if it's available within your region, if you're whitelisted, select a resource group, click next, walk through a short wizard, and then the setup and configuration with regards to Azure NetApp files will be done for you. Now later, if you then go back into your Evas Logics profile storage locations, you will be able to select Azure NetApp files or Azure files at a later stage as well. Pretty cool, right? So if we go back to the workspaces where we just were, select the drop-down menu again, then Evas Logics, then this is basically, use the defaults. These are the defaults. This is the field I just showed you within the settings page, right? So if you do not want to use the defaults for this host pool, click or uncheck use defaults, make any changes you like, click OK, and there you go. It will be applied immediately, but only to hosts that will be newly added to this host pool or when they get re-imaged or something like that. And of course, again, with the flip of a switch, pretty simple, we can turn it off and on for this specific host pool as well. Okay, what more do we have? We already talked about resize, reimage. I think deactivate, activate, and delete pretty much speak for themselves. The Active Directory stuff, which we have on the settings page as well, we won't have a look at this time. Okay, let's have a look at some of the users and roles available, because there are some interesting things in there as well. So I won't go over all of them, because we have multiple WVD admin, desktop admin, help desk, a couple of nuances between these two, of course. Help desk speaks for itself. Reviewer is basically read-only, and the end user is well, sort of a special one. Here you can see the users which are part of the end user role within Nerdio Manager for WVD. And of course, this is pretty simple to edit as well. Here we can select the role associated with this user. We can add in tenants, workspaces, and so on and so forth. And you can see that this specific user, as part of the end user role, is a member of multiple tenants, multiple host pools within multiple tenants, and a workspace as well. And I wanted to show you how that looks if we log into Nerdio Manager for WVD from an end user perspective using this specific account. So yeah, I'd like to show you that first before I continue. Okay, so there we go. I'm now logged in as tester, and here you can see my personal desktop sessions from an end user perspective when logged into the Nerdio Manager for WVD. And here I have, as a end user, or the end user role within Nerdio Manager for WVD, the option to power on and power off and log off my own personal sessions with regards to a personal assigned desktop, which is pretty cool, right? And we have multiple companies specifically asking for this feature because we are the only ones who can offer this. And we have more examples of that, of course. But again, this is pretty cool and pretty handy to have. Okay, so I'm logged back in as an admin again. Just one more thing I'd like to show you before I end this presentation. So back into our host pools. Here you see user sessions. Just a very quick overview on this as well, just so you know, we can log off, we can send a message, we can disconnect, we can shadow. Now this user isn't active at this time, but normally you would be able to do all this as well. Just so you know, it's basically the one-stop shop with everything related to WVD. That's something I wanted to tell you guys. Okay, so back to one of my final slides. I'd like to leave you with a couple of resources to think about. We have the Nerdio Academy, which is filled with with all the good stuff, blog posts, white papers, all sorts of technical information and documentation, infographics, you name it. Go and have a look. The Demo of the Day series have been very popular as well. Videos over 30 in there already, ranging from 1 to multiple minutes. Very handy, very cool to watch as well, very helpful. The Nerdio Zendesk page with technical insights and some troubleshooting information here and there if you need it. I don't think so, but you never know. And of course, a 30-day free trial on the Azure Marketplace. Go to the Azure Marketplace, search for Nerdio Manager for WVD, and you'll be good to go for at least 30 days. With that, of course, there's more to share. There's more to tell. I'll be around for answering questions. Please feel free to reach out using any of these resources if you have any questions with regards to the presentation or in the weeks or months going forward. I'll be here as well for the day. And I'd like to thank you very much for joining this presentation. I hope you learned a thing or two. Again, I'd like to be in touch after this presentation. I wish you a very good day, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the conference. Thank you.